Good afternoon, band directors, band leadership inner circle members. It's Dwayne Huff with Band Leadership Seminars, Band Leadership Online, and Band Leadership Inner Circle. And I hope you had a great first day back to school. If this was your first day back, I know many of you went back today to start a new semester, so I hope it went well. As you watch this, drop in your comments. Let me know how it went. Give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Hopefully it was a success for you. If you're watching this live, please say hello. Feel free to comment on the topic at hand as I go through this. But to honor what I said yesterday, I am going to start answering questions that came in when you guys jumped into the Band Leadership Inner Circle group. You answered 3 questions and you were admitted in, and I'm way behind on answering those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing that right now. I don't have my glasses on right now. Let me put them on real quick because I see some people popping in. Hey, Mike. Happy New Year, sir. I hope you are doing well up there in Arkansas, I believe it is. Stay tuned, man. I'm going to answer some questions here. Hey, Ray. Good to see you. So let me jump in here. You'll see the questions that came from this band director who entered the inner circle not long ago, and I'll tag him in the comments so he'll see the answer to his questions here in a little bit. But I had to reword them a little bit just to kind of catch the attention of the people who watch the replay on this. But if you have any wisdom or insight into any of these questions as a band director, again, the whole premise of this private group is to serve you, the band directors, and to facilitate a conversation where you guys can support each other, right? So with that being said, you'll see the Q&A there in the comments that I wrote up there, or the announcement that I wrote up there. But let me read them to you the way that it was written. The 3 questions that I ask are, what's your number 1 question about developing your student leaders? And to that, the band director responded how they can be seen as a leader, but they're an underclassman. So I rewrote it, how can my underclassmen be taken seriously as leaders? Again, as I'm answering these, feel free to jump in there and add comments, ask additional questions, participate in this conversation in any way you'd like. Even if you're watching the replay, we'll see them, we'll respond to them. I get a notification every time you guys respond, like it, ask a question. So this is the place to do that. Second one is, how can I create a non-judgmental leadership team? And then finally, how do I teach them to make decisions based on ethical and moral standards instead of a popularity contest? I'm reading these, but I hear these consistently. And as you guys came into the group, I have 10 Word document pages worth of Q&A, probably more than that. And I see some patterns. And I've been out doing this for 7 years, working with band directors and students live, anywhere between now and January all the way through December, depending on the year. And I hear these questions like the ones we're going to talk about right now out there in the field with band directors, and I answer it with them there, and we address it in the live events. But I'm doing 2 things this year. Number 1, I'm going to answer these questions for you, and I'm going to learn from you, and you guys are going to learn from each other. But then I'm going to create a video that is going to speak to your students, and I'm going to have the conversation with your students in a video that you can share with them. But not only share with them, it's designed to facilitate conversation. Because here's what I'll say about all the questions that have come into me from you guys, and I really do appreciate them. It helps me to understand what you need and how to serve you best. And that's my commitment to you, is to continue to give my very best, increase my knowledge, improve my knowledge, learn from you, and be able to perpetuate this message of leadership and servant leadership. But now I'm going to create a video that you can share with your students. So to answer any of these questions that I see, the first thing I would say across the board for all of these questions is, number 1, have this conversation with your leaders based on the standard of your expectation. Whatever it is that you expect, want, need, or hope to see in your student leaders, in your leadership team, or even in your band members, whatever culture you're trying to establish. If you're proactive about having this conversation with them and constantly reinforcing over time, dropping the seeds of wisdom that you want them to pick up, then you're going to find yourself over time creating a culture. And I talked to so many band directors last year who were brand new band directors in their roles, and they were either transferred into the band program, or they came in and filled in for another band director or several band directors who were inconsistent. And so the students are all up in the air. They don't know who to trust. They don't know what to believe, and they're expecting their band director to move on. Or they entered a program, the band directors entered a program, and they took on, really, to be honest, a nightmare, and they had to start creating a culture over time that would allow those nightmares, if you will, to graduate to fully create a culture. Now, I've never been an educator, so I'm not going to judge that here or there. I know sometimes it's challenging. You've got to let it play out as you plant the seeds for a new culture. That's why I'm asking you guys as band directors who've had this experience to jump in there and help with this. But I would say, first and foremost, have this conversation. Whatever it is that you're trying to see in your program, have this conversation proactively with your leaders. And one way to do that is to simply sit them down away from the rest of the band program and have a session with them, an open discussion around their ideas and their thoughts, or share yours and get their thoughts back. A simple way to do that is to take one of my videos or another video that you find on YouTube or whatever the resource is, play that video for your students, and then have some questions ready to go that will open them up and facilitate discussion around the content so that you can hear what they're thinking and kind of see the way it's playing out, right? So without further ado, let me jump in here and share my thoughts and my ideas around this, and then I'll go. Mike says, that is a great question. Thanks, Mike. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but yeah. So here's my thoughts on this. First one, I'm reading them from the screen here, the way that they're written here. How can my underclassmen be taken seriously as leaders? I can only speak from experience in what worked for me and what did not work for me, and maybe some things that I've learned along the way that have improved my situation or did as I was going through my journey. Again, 9-time student leader and 6-time drum major, and made a lot of mistakes, but did some things that actually worked out. So here's my thought on that. As an underclassman, how can they be taken seriously as a student leader? Well, first and foremost, they need a foundation in leadership, in servant leadership. The first and foremost thing that they have to understand, I learned this the hard way. The first thing they have to understand is that leadership 100% every single time is not about them. It's not about a title. It's not about authority, because basically they don't have any unless you're in a different situation that's actually given them authority. But they're there to serve. They're there to set the tone. They're there to carry out your directions, your guidance, your vision. But they have to do that in a way that influences their peers without pushing, without demanding, without yelling at, or trying to be dictatorial, because you and I both know that goes south very quick. And so two things. Number one, here's how it happened for me. When I'm in high school, right, after my freshman year, my band director approached me and said, hey, I want you to go away to a drum major camp, student leadership camp, because we want you to come back and be groomed to ultimately be the drum major. It may take a couple of years. We're going to start you out as student conductor. So they sent me to the cream of the crop. They sent me to Dr. Tim. I learned some phenomenal lessons about leadership. I got the heads up about, if you do this, it's not going to work out for you. If you do that, you're going to have a better chance of it. And one of the things was to be humble, to be respectful, to give, to serve, to help, to build relationships, but to always realize that I had to set the example of attitude, of practice, and of work ethic. So I spoke through my actions and the example and the standard that I set for myself. And I was taught that if I did that, the respect of my peers would come over time, but it wasn't something that I could push. So what I did is, when I got out of that first year of being with Dr. Tim in the summer, fortunately, I had an assistant drum major and a drum major that were running the show, and I was simply being groomed to be in that position. So I immediately realized that situation. I respected those boundaries. I humbled myself, and I disciplined myself to march the best that I possibly could, practice as much as I possibly could, respect the assistant drum major and the drum major to set the example, because I knew if even for 1 second I hiccuped or I messed up, that there were several other people in that band that were shooting for the position of drum major. So for me, the stakes were high. I had something invested. So I realized I was laid the foundation by one of the greatest, and I took it to heart. And the goal that I had of being drum major, I didn't know if I was going to be. It was just kind of a carrot that they gave to me. but I set my sight on it, and I had a commitment level to it. And so every rehearsal, every practice, every time we marched, I made sure inside that I stood, well, back in the day, stood at attention. I don't care if there were bees flying around or ants crawling up my leg. I was not going to move. I set a standard in my own sight and in my own mind that I was going to portray to everyone around me. And I didn't walk around talking about, oh, did you see me? Did you see what I did? Did you see how good I am? I did not do that. I humbled myself because it was impressed upon me that if I was going to be effective as a leader, I was going to have to set the standard. I was going to have to be consistent in my attitude. I was going to have to push through when times were tough. And whenever I felt like quitting or I wanted to give up or I felt like complaining, that was not an option. And so fortunately, I had a very good foundation. So the first thing is I think that your students have to be given an excellent foundation in leadership, whether that comes from you having discussions with them, sending them away to camp, allowing them to work with me, or any other resource that's out there. They have to be shown and told how to be respectful, how to be humble, and how to set an example through the way that they act, behave, conduct themselves in rehearsal, practice, and operate around their peers. And then, only then, will the upperclassmen start to respect them on any level, but they have to know it's a long game. Because they have to know when they engage as upperclassmen, that all eyes are on them, and they're upperclassmen by the nature of who they are just waiting for them to mess up and slap their hand. And unfortunately, I did not carry that lesson forward whenever I was the drum major of the Drum and Bugle Corps that I went on tour with. And I came in with ego. Look at me, I'm the best, look what I did, I'm the drum major, you have to listen to me. And as you can imagine, that didn't work out very good. I had one friend on that entire tour. He was my seatmate. He was a great guy, and but he understood. You know, he was very forgiving. We got along, but it seemed like everybody else in the Corps hated me because I was arrogant. I hadn't paid my dues like the rest of them, and that came back to bite me. And if that wasn't enough, and I didn't learn that lesson, I went into my freshman year in college as a freshman drum major. And I went in there, they hired me because I was an amazing showman and conductor, and I knew it. And I forgot the lesson of humility. And now I went in as a freshman drum major. I should have been humble. I should have been quiet. I should have listened. I should have served. I should have kept my mouth shut. I should have built relationship. And the only time I should have been arrogant and confident, not arrogant, but confident, was when I stepped on the podium. And so I think maybe help your students who are underclassmen understand what strength they bring to the table, that you selected them as leaders. Let them know that they're good at that, but give them the heads up and say, listen, if you carry that around in an arrogant, overconfident way outside of rehearsal and out of the context of your role and job, it's going to come back to bite you. You have to humble yourself. You have to be a servant of all if you want to be great in this band, because your upperclassmen are waiting for you to mess up, and just making them aware of it, right? And I'll shoot a video about these 3 topics that you can share, and maybe that'll set the foundation, or maybe it'll do the trick, right, to help in there. So that's it. That's my 2 cents on that. I think they have to be given a foundation in leadership to understand what it is, why it's important, why servant leadership and the proper attitude is their greatest asset. And I think they have to be given a heads up that if you step outside the lines, or if you overplay this, or if you are trying to force your peers to do something, or you're trying to exercise authority over them, it's going to come back to bite you. But if you'll humble yourself, if you'll be the best example you can, if you'll practice more than anybody, not that I'm asking you to be the best musician in the band, but I'm asking you to be the best musician you can, and you get those 3 things working together, and then show up consistently in your attitude, your upperclassmen will begin to respect you, but it's going to take time. It's not an overnight thing. It's a long game. So all that to say, hopefully that serves. And as band directors that have students that want your students to, your underclassmen leaders, like your 10th graders or your 11th graders, to be respected in a position of leadership, help them to understand that, and also have a conversation with your upperclassmen about the reason that you selected some of those underclassmen to be leaders. Because many times, if they just understand why they were selected, what talent and strength they bring to the table, and they're on the lookout for that, then maybe they don't judge the situation as harshly as they would. I mean, they're teenagers, right? And they're very emotional creatures. So many times they're jealous. They wanted that spot and they didn't get it. And many times it manifests itself as confrontation. So hopefully that serves. Hopefully that helps to answer number one. Again, if you have any experience or whatever experience you have as band director, please drop it in the comments. Add to the conversation so that your peers, including this band director who asked these questions, can benefit from it, right? All right, number two, and I'm reading again from the screen here. How can I create a non-judgmental leadership team? Number one, again, have a conversation with them about it. Find a video that will kind of set the tone or open the conversation, or tell a story about your past experience. You know, maybe a story about whenever you were in their position and, you know, used to, let's see, I want to make sure I got all the context here. Right. Maybe a time whenever you were judgmental or snapped to judgment or didn't look at things for what they were or judged a peer in a role. Just tell the story, right? And the story goes, you know what, back in the day, here's the way I looked at things. Here's how I approached it. I was kind of judgmental and here was why. And then here's what happened. And tell the story of how it kind of broke apart on you when you came to the realization, and turn that story around and show how you came to the realization that this was the better way to be, right? Another way that I do it with students is I will say, I'll put a piece of flip chart paper on the wall, which is a great teaching tool because you can always take it, post it on the wall, and it stays there. But it's built on the foundation of this: people support what people help create, and you bring your students in to do this. And I'd simply say, hey, you know, when it comes to being a leader, and give them some scenarios. When you see this happen, what do you initially think? And let them tell you, and you flip chart it out. Say, okay, well, when you see this situation, what do you think? And let it flip chart that out. Okay, so say now, as a leader who's a servant, and knowing that it's not about us, it's about the band, and we're here to improve the show, the performance, the rehearsals, the way our members play music, even the weakest ones. With that hat on, think about it again, that situation. What should we think about that situation? And let them tell you. And if you set that tone and that context right, they'll see that maybe that snap judgment that they initially said was not necessarily the best way to approach it as a leader, especially with a servant's heart. And they will come up with their own solutions. People support what people help create. And if they do that, then you won't have to constantly be reinforcing it in your program day in and day out. Another way that you can do this, and it's available to you right now, I don't know if you have access to it, is somebody drop this in the comments because I don't want to mess up the screen by doing this, but bandleadershiponline.com. If you go to that page and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, are my 3 free videos that have been serving bands for the last 7 years. The first video talks about the different behavioral styles. We use different characters if you haven't seen it. It's really effective. I've gotten great feedback on that. But another way to stop the judgmentalness is to help them understand how they're wired, how they approach things, how they think about certain situations, and to see the distinction about how others in the bands approach things, think, receive information, approach life. That simple adjustment and understanding, I've seen squish drama and judgmentalness completely, because they have a greater understanding of themselves and of the people around them, and they realize that just because somebody doesn't do something the way they would do it, approach things the way they would approach it, or think about it the way that they think about it, it stops them in their tracks from always knee-jerking in that judgmental way. Or if they do, they self-correct. Right? So those are some resources that will really help you. Facilitate the conversation, tell your stories, flip chart, snap judgments, or the way they might be approaching it now, and then say, okay, now let's put our leadership hat on of a servant, of humble, of having a great attitude, of always expecting the best. Now let's look at these things again. How should we judge this? How should we approach it? What should we think about it? If you'll do that activity with them, you'll start to see how they think, and you'll guide them and lead them in the direction that they should go. And then get those videos at bandleadershiponline.com. Go all the way to the bottom. They're free videos, 3 free videos. The first one, video number 1, is that behavioral styles teach, and it has gone miles to help people. So again, if you're a band director on here, you're watching replay, you're watching live, and you have some thoughts about how to create a team that's non-judgmental, please drop it in the comments. This is about your peers and about you. It's not about me. I'm just facilitating a conversation here, sharing my wisdom and experience as a leader, which wasn't always the best experience. But that's the whole thing. That's why I went on a journey. How do we do this better? How do we give kids who have not had their prefrontal cortex fully developed, so they're making snap decisions, they're not thinking about long-term consequences, they're not even thinking about consequences that happen a week from now? How do we get them to make solid decisions? And the best thing that we can do is put the right tools in front of them so that even if they don't understand it fully, if they fall back on the principles and on the tools and they interact with it, then in the moment when they have to make the best decisions, they have a better chance. And that would be the big thing that I would say. So hopefully that served. And last but not least, question number 3. How do I teach them to make decisions based on ethical and moral standards instead of popularity? First of all, I acknowledge the fact that they are many times going to be tempted to vote for the person or make decisions on the person that they're most comfortable with, that they know the best, that they like the most, and it's natural. And I'd acknowledge that. And lower the walls, because once those walls are lowered, you can ask the question again and facilitate the conversation. I know it's a tendency for us to want to pick the most popular person to lead. I know it's easy to hang out with cool kids. I know it's easy to get in cliques. But if we're going to serve this band, if we're going to make it about them and not about us, if we're going to see this whole band rise to a level that we've never seen before, how should we make our decisions in these instances? And have a few of those cases and instances where you'd like to see them make more sound decisions, and list them out and ask, how would you approach this? Now, as you know, if you put kids on the spot and you ask them a question, there's going to be knee-jerk reactions. They're going to make fun of the situation because they're uncomfortable. I see it all the time in my programs, and I'm constantly reminded, don't do it that way, right? But if you have your group of leaders and you're asking these questions and you say something like, hey, in this situation right here, we have Tommy, we have Sally, we have Susie. In your gut, your immediate reaction, who would you pick for that position? And let them write it down. And then maybe that starts a conversation. So, I'd say something like, hey, listen, I don't want you to raise your hand. I don't want you to tell me this is between you and you. But let me ask you a question. Whenever you picked Sally, was that because she's popular, because she's cool, because you like her? Or is there another reason why that is? And say, I don't need to hear it. That's between you and you, but think how you do it. And that starts a conversation, right? And then you can say, okay, so let's talk about some situations where picking the most popular person, the coolest person, the loudest person might not be the best thing, but we should choose them by other standards. What would those standards be? In other words, if you had a section leader, a drum major, a band captain that you were going to follow and you wanted to respect them, what are some of the qualities that you would want them to have and you would want them to see that would inspire you to follow them even when times were difficult, even when maybe they didn't say or do the right thing, but you knew they were solid? How should we judge that? What should we use as criteria to make decisions on those people, on those situations, on those circumstances? And then say, before you speak or before you do this, I want you to jot it down right there where you are. And then I would put them into groups. And I would say, okay, guys, here's what I want you to do. In groups of 4, I want you to talk about it. I want you to brainstorm it. I want you to beat it up. I want you to talk through it. And then I want you guys on that flip chart paper, on a piece of flip chart paper, I want you to come up with 4 qualities that you would expect to have in a leader. Or I want you to come up with 4 criteria on which you would make a decision that's not based on popularity. Again, it's just another way of guiding them through a conversation. And I would say before you start that, have your end in mind clear as to what you would hope they would make those decisions on. And so no matter what they come up with, you can gently guide and lead them to the decision that's best for them, for the band, for the team, for your program, right? So they're shifted away from always having that knee jerk of wanting to vote for the person or decide on the situation that's the most popular, the easiest, the most fun, that might not be the right direction, right? And so again, 3 questions there. I see a lot of people have come in here. I'm so glad you guys watched this. Please don't hesitate. Drop your comments in there, even if you're watching the replay. And if you enjoyed this video and you're getting value from this, you have colleagues out there that aren't yet a part of this band leadership inner circle. Please invite them to join. It's free of charge, and we'd love their input too. Again, this is all about you guys and serving you. I'm just answering questions that you guys have submitted as you've come into the band leadership inner circle, and I'm honored to have you here. I want to continue to serve you. So if you like this, give me a heart or a thumbs up so that I know. If there's anything else you'd like to know about that topic, drop it in the comments, and drop your thoughts, your experience, and your ideas so that other band directors in this group can benefit from your wisdom. So, hey, I hope this has served you. I will continue to go live like this. In fact, hopefully I'll get this in before the end of the night. I'm going to go live on my band leadership seminars page and shoot a video to the students about these 3 areas to kind of educate and guide them so they're thinking properly. And you can use that as a resource to share with them later. But make sure you're on that page so you know when I do band leadership seminars, which is a fan page, like the page, you'll see when I go live. And last thing I'll say is this, it's a new season, 2019, and if you would like to work with me live, I'd love to talk with you about that. You can run over to my page, bandleadershipseminars.com/live. All the details are there. There's an application there. I'm taking applications right now. I'm only doing 20 events. We have 8 scheduled already as of the time of this recording. And so if that's of interest to you, do not wait. Go over to the page, submit the application, and then we'll talk about it. Until then, if any other questions surface or there's anything else that you'd like to know, anything that's top of mind, don't hesitate to reach out to me via Messenger through this private group, or drop it in the comments or make a post in the group asking the question. Either way is fine with me. Until we talk next time, I'm going to strive to go live just about every day of the week answering these questions because I'm backed up on these questions. But please don't let this be a monologue. Please let me know what you're thinking. Create some dialogue, not just with me, but with your peers, and let's work together to let everyone this year in 2019 rise and have our best season ever. Leadership's not seasonal. It needs to start right now with the students, but inevitably, marching band will come around, and we need to have those leaders in place, qualified, ready to go, and as strong as they can possibly be so your program can rise. Have a good evening. I hope you had a great first day back to school if that was your situation. We'll talk soon, and take care. Bye-bye.